Well, hey guys, and welcome back to the homestead. Hope this new year of 2022 is starting out good. Hope you had a good night last night, celebrated, and hopefully this next year turns out being a whole lot better than it was last year. I know we all kind of went through some crazy stuff. And it was definitely not an improvement on 2020. So that's behind us as we look forward to 2022. I figured I'd kind of do a quick year in review and kind of give you some stuff of what, a generalization of what we took place on the homestead last year. So let's kind of go ahead and get this started. Figured this time last year, when I was coming into 2021, I had just put meat chickens and meat ducks in my freezer. I had over 300 pounds of poultry that I put in the freezer. And it pretty much filled everything up. And as good as that sounds, that kind of set up the rest of the year and a particular issue that I had. So going into last year, one thing I did is I significantly expanded my garden beds. I went from 3 to 12. And in the process of doing that, a couple of mistakes I made is I did not account for the abundance that was going to come in. Because when we started doing harvesting and needing to put stuff in the freezers, because of the chickens and the ducks in the freezer, we weren't able to store stuff in the freezer. And so all of a sudden we hit this point of trying to process, whether it was canning or dehydrating. We had it was made things challenging, to say the least. But I kind of want to go through and kind of give you an idea of what all we harvested last year and go from there. First off, let's talk with the ducks and the chickens as far as egg production anyway. So, because I didn't raise any meat birds this year at all. Everything was all from that we have in the freezers from 2020, and we're still eating on some of those as well. So just, two of us eating, that's been plenty of meat to get us through for what we needed to do. So egg production with 2 ducks, I got for the year 481 duck eggs last year. And that was with the first 2.5 months of them not producing anything. It wasn't until March 15th or so that we started seeing some production in eggs. And then they kind of went from there. And they've been, last year they had stopped producing around December 15th or 18th, but I think last December was a lot colder than it was this year as well. So they, from mid-December till mid-March, they shut down production and didn't lay any eggs. And then in March, what they started putting up and have been pretty regular. They're kind of slowing down a little bit now. The month of December was only 29 eggs for the 2 of them, whereas in comparison of like April of last year, the 2 of them produced 60 eggs. So that's just with the ducks. Now we've got 9 hens, chicken hens. Between the 9 of them, they didn't stop producing at all last year. They've kind of let off in October, November, December, just slowed down a little bit. But no major thing. But we got a total of 1,766 eggs for the year. Now you're wondering, how in the heck do you know? I track these. I actually have a spreadsheet I have on my computer, and I enter the data in on a daily basis. I get to be kind of anal like that. So total for last year, we had 2,247 eggs for the year. That's a lot of eggs. I think we sold a bunch of them. We gave some of them away. I don't think we threw a bunch of them away. We may have had some that we just had to get rid of or whatever. But my wife is a great cook and does a lot of stuff, and is very. She makes a lot of egg bites that I can take to work. She uses her Instant Pot to do that. So that's the story with the eggs and what we've done there. Now with the garden, let's kind of transition over there. Clean my whistle. So with the garden, I broke it out in the categories. They were in a lot of different areas, and I made notes or wrote notes. And of course, it figures. I prefer to print this out on a computer paper. I don't print a lot here at home anyway. I do a lot of stuff at work, but I don't do it here. Of course, my wife runs out of computer paper today. kind of way this year's been going, right? So we'll start out with beans. So I grew two types of green beans last year. I grew Landreth green beans, and they're called Roma 2 green beans. With the Landreth, I got 4 pounds 6 ounces last year, and then the Roma 2, I got 6 pounds 11 ounces. Now when I weighed those are full pods and everything, and the Roma pods are bigger than the Landreth. I think there's maybe 2 packages of each, small packages of seeds. I know if I plant either one of them, again, I'm going to need to get more seeds than just 1 or 2 packages with the size beds, because I like to do one bed all the same kind of deal. I'd just to kind of make it all even. Although that said, those were bush beans, and I think I want to go more with pole beans than bush beans, because bending over bed trying to pick green beans is a pain in the back, and it's difficult. You can lose some, you can not find some in there, and it can be a little bit of a challenge there. And one other thing I put into the beans category, they're more of a cowpea, the zipper cream peas from Haas Tools. I planted an entire bed of those. The majority of my beds are 5 foot wide by 10 foot long. And so I planted an entire bed of those, and I harvested shelled peas, 14 pounds and 13 ounces. That's quite a few peas to come out, at least in my opinion. Maybe you've had better, maybe you've had worse. You tell me what you think it is. But that's what we've gotten on those. Now, on a miscellaneous note, as far as beans go, I did plant Lima beans. Didn't get enough to really harvest to mention anything about. They flowered later than the other beans. I had 2 packages, I think, but one of them just a generic Lima bean. The other one was a Ford Hook Lima bean. They seemed to take forever. They like into fall when they started flowering and actually started putting on pods. Now that said, I think I had a mouse living. The whole bed was just one mass of greenery and stuff, and I think there may have been a mouse in there. So I don't know how many I lost to possibly a rodent eating everything. But I ended up getting some. I think I can plant some again next year with the seeds that I did harvest, because I found a lot of dry pods. So we'll kind of go from there and see what we've got. So that takes care of the beans. Brassicas, most of the brassicas are on this list are all from what I've harvested this year in the fall garden. I've still got the fall garden going, and so we'll kind of see. So as of right now, I've made 1 harvest of broccoli. It was 1 pound and 4 ounces. I made 1 big harvest of collards, which is 17 pounds 5 ounces. And I can still go harvest quite a few more out there. There's quite a bit of collards out there. And I harvested 10 kohlrabi, which came up to like 7 pounds and 13 ounces. Now I know out in the garden, which will go into 2022, we've still got quite a bit out there. I've got some broccoli that's not started forming yet. I've got cauliflower out there that's not started forming yet. I've got some cabbage. I've got 1 Savoy cabbage out there it can be harvested at any time. I'm going to let it get a little bit bigger. And I've got a couple other cabbages that are now kind of starting to form. And so we're doing all right. I want to make some notes on that. I'll come back to the brassicas. Actually, no, let me do that here. Kind of talk about lessons learned a little bit, especially on the brassicas. Now I plant everything kind of square foot gardening method. And so with the brassicas, I put 1 per square foot on a lot of this stuff. and you can kind of see it's all crunched. It's together. Some of the stuff overpowers the other stuff, and this has been one of the big lessons this year is spacing. I think all of the brassicas actually need more space than 1 square foot per plant. I think they need 18 inches to to up to 2 foot per plant. Give them the extra space so they've got room to actually develop, because when they start out small, when they get big and start to mature, they are big plants. And almost with some of my broccoli, I almost kind of think I needed to put some kind of support around them to hold them up a little bit, kind of like a tomato cage kind of deal. That you'd use. They're better for peppers, really, the smaller ones, just to kind of give them a little support, because some of them are kind of falling over and stuff like that. So that's one thing to start to take into consideration in the future is spacing. Give them more space. It'll work out better in the long end. Let's talk herbs for a minute. Now, I grew quite a few basil plants last year. I actually harvested 10 pounds, 1 ounces of basil. Could have harvested a whole lot more. A, I didn't harvest it as much as I should have. I could have trimmed that up a whole lot more. But B, also where they were planted, back to the spacing thing again. I had other stuff growing over it and just crowding it out, and so they were in spots where they couldn't get the full sunlight because like eggplant was covering it up, and or my tomatoes or tomatillos were covering them up. And so they would have done a whole lot better if they'd had more space to grow in, and that's going to be a theme throughout this whole thing. Stevia, I harvested 1 pound 9 ounces and actually made some extract. Matter of fact, if you look, that jar right there, the dark one right here, that's actually stevia. So what I did, put some stevia leaves, packed that jar full of leaves, filled it full of vodka, let it sit for 24, 36 hours, drained it out, took the leaves out, and then that's what's left. As long as you've still got the alcohol in there, it's supposed to stay for a while. When you want to use it, you put it in a saucepan, burn the alcohol off, and it's good to use. I still need to do that. I've still got the store-bought stuff I've been using, so that's still something I've got to get back and go do. But I grew 3 plants of stevia, did good. Again, it was in with my peppers. It was and some of the peppers I threw in as an afterthought, and the peppers outgrew the stevia. So there was some competition there, and the stevia could have done better had I given it more space, and had I done a lot more harvesting and pruning it back a little bit more often. So now I've got this thing here. I've got onions. I grew red onions and yellow onions. I put 3 pounds 3 ounces on my red onions. That was not a whole lot. And I knew I didn't write the weights at all on the yellow onions. I knew I grew quite a bit. My wife's already used them, so we didn't. I just forgot to get the weight on those. It wasn't quite as much. The red onions, I made a mistake. I was at Tractor Supply, and there's a bag of the bulbs, and so I said, "I'll give these a shot," and emailed the company and stuff, and found out later, because it wasn't written on the package, that they were long day onions, and here in Texas we need short day onions because of the day length and stuff like that. So onions we had a few that we were able to use throughout the year. Garlic. I harvested 204 heads of garlic last year. I never put a weight to it, but just kind of give you an idea. I've got one whole bed right now, a 5 foot by 10 foot bed filled with garlic right now. It's up in a screen and it's going good. All of that came from the 204 bulbs that I harvested, which was I planted about 5 pounds of garlic to do that. And there's still more than that. So I'm going to guess we had 15 pounds of garlic that we harvested if we're to actually put a weight to it. So it was a fair amount of garlic, and I'm going to have, seeing that, I'm kind of like going, oh, I'm going to have a lot of garlic next year. If all of this comes up like it's been, this is going to be good. And then we get into, we start talking about some peppers. Sweet peppers. This was one of those that I wasn't expecting this kind of a harvest. I know I've grown bell peppers in the past and have never had a significant kind of bell pepper harvest. This year was a bit different. I got 25 pounds and 4 ounces of bell peppers. But I grew some Cubanelles and I grew some gypsy peppers. The Cubanelles, it was the one I really wanted to try. I'd heard they were more productive. So I planted, I think, something like 6 to 12 plants. The gypsy peppers I bought on a whim. I bought 3 plants. And I want to say I probably had about 6 bell peppers too. But the Cubanelle peppers, I harvested 51 pounds and 8 ounces of Cubanelles, and then 25 pounds even of the gypsy peppers. So that's over 100 pounds of sweet peppers that we grew this summer, and we weren't quite ready for how to process that. That was rather overwhelming when it all came in and we started bringing it. I mean, I was bringing this stuff in 18-gallon totes when it came in, so it was a lot of peppers. I think one of the things I want to grow next year, I've already got the seeds for, some paprika peppers. That's going to be an experiment going into next year. I want to try and see. I got those from M.I. Gardner, and we'll kind of go from there. So, but sweet peppers, that was a bumper crop. Hot peppers. So we grew three types of hot peppers. I grew some golden jalapenos, some regular mammoth jalapenos, and then some poblanos. The poblanos, I only harvested maybe a handful, less than a pound. It's like 13 ounces of peppers on those, but they were planted right next to the cucumbers, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but yeah, they had no chance. That was, again, another spacing issue. They needed room to grow, and I didn't give it to them. And so the golden jalapenos, actually I'm harvesting 5 pounds and 15 ounces of those. But again, they had more space than what I had. I could have probably gotten a lot more of those as well. It's just my cucumbers sort of took over that particular bed, and that's another lesson learned for next year. Is like, yeah, cucumbers, I need to trellis them better, and so we'll get to that in a little bit. So, but the regular jalapenos, I got 34 pounds at 8 ounces, and I think there were about 6 plants with those. So I was definitely not, I was pleased with the hot pepper harvest as well. I just know it could have been better had I done things a little bit differently. So that was, pepper harvest was definitely something that we were not expecting that good. Then we talk root crops. Root crops were not really that good of a success this year. I mean, I had 1 pound and 11 ounces of beets. I actually had 8 pounds of carrots, 8 pounds, 4 ounces of carrots, and then watermelon radishes, we had 1 pound and 12 ounces. I didn't go crazy with them last year. And I may have even harvested some that I didn't record as well. That's possible. That was kind of a trial. We do know that we like them, and I will grow more. Unfortunately, the ones I planted this year didn't really, I don't know what was going on with those. Those didn't come up like I was expecting. We'll have to try them in a different spot a little bit later on when the weather warms back up enough. I'm not afraid of the frost, but we've got a cold front running through right now. It's dropped 20 degrees today. That's why I'm in here instead of doing this outside, because I was in a short sleeve shirt earlier, and then I stepped outside at 2 o'clock to go take care of the birds, let them out, change their water and stuff, and it was already down in the 40s. And over the next couple of days, we're supposed to have a pretty good freeze. So that's kind of what happened with the watermelon radishes there. The rest of the radishes did fine, so that's just kind of weird. It's just that one type didn't do real well on that. And so hopefully we'll have a better judge on radishes next year. I'm not displeased with what we got. I just didn't attempt to try growing more last year than what we did. Squash family. This was well, the numbers are going to sound better than what they actually are. It's going to sound like we had a pretty good harvest, and yeah, we did, but this is another one of those growing stuff you don't really know what, how to take care of and stuff. So we had some issues. So I grew it was called a kibosh pumpkin. Kibosh squash is like a Japanese pumpkin. It's a green thing like that. And we harvested like 53 pounds and 15 ounces of them from a total of 14, squash. Unfortunately, I don't think we cooked a single one of them. I think they all ended up, when we harvested them, they were all in, because I didn't have the space really for them, and so they were in the grass and outside the bed. And I think bugs got into them, made them all up, and I don't know how well they store on the shelf either. So that might have been a whole nother problem. So we never really got around to processing those. I grew a little less than 20 pounds, 19 pounds, 13 ounces of spaghetti squash. We've got a few of them on the shelf right now that we've got that are using, but again, I think we ended up throwing, more of them went into the compost than what we were able to keep. Some crookneck squash, between the yellow crookneck and the zucchini, the vine borers ate me up. We got 6 pounds of crookneck squash and the pound and 5 ounces of zucchini. So vine borers, I am staying away from squash going forward for at least 2 or 3 years until we're get any vine borers out of here, and they don't know where to find the squash anymore. We grew some butternut squash. Most of them were pretty small. We got 22 pounds, 10 ounces of butternut. I think we've still got quite a few of those around, but they're, like I said, they're all real small. So squash was kind of something I did on a whim. I was like, let's throw these in here and see what happens. And then they were, 20-foot long vines on some of these, because they, took off and went everywhere. Wasn't expecting them to grow that much. And then the vine borers with the crookneck and the zucchini just took those out. I was actually surprised I got anything from the others as well, because they were all over them, but it is what it is on that. And then I'm calling this the tomato family. I've got 3 different plants or varieties here. I've got a marriage Marzano, which is a cross between a San Marzano tomato and a cream leg bar tomato, and so they called it a marriage Marzano. I grew some tomatillos and eggplant. Marriage Marzano is by far the most productive. I had 5 plants. I had some Roma 2 tomatoes. Those, I mean, if they were 5 pounds of tomatoes off those were just did not produce well at all. Didn't like them. I've grown them. I think I've grown those in the past, and it's like, I'm done with those. They're a variety that I buy transplants from here, at some of our local stores, and I'll not grow those again. But these San Marzanos, or the marriage Marzanos, a combination, I harvested 90 pounds and 12 ounces of tomatoes from 5 plants. Now maybe take 5 off of that, because I didn't separate the weight between the Roma 2 and the marriage Marzano, but I know the marriage Marzano outproduced the Romas, 10 to 1. And that may be giving them extra credit. It was ridiculous, the amount of tomatoes. But the mistake I made there was not trellising them right, and it was a jungle. And it's like going in there trying to harvest stuff and digging through trying to find stuff and stuff like that. And yet we still got a ton of tomatoes. The tomatillos, we're back to a spacing thing. I put them in the same bed. I've grown tomatillos one time before, about 20 years ago. Excuse me. And I don't remember seeing a plant get this big. These plants got huge. They set flowers, but very little fruit. Very little actually came from it. I think I ended up harvesting 11 ounces of tomatillos. So something I'll try again in the future for sure, but I definitely want to give them the space, stake them up, keep them, give them the respect that they need. And then eggplants, I had 6 eggplants, I think. I harvested 40 eggplants off of those puppies. Again, I was not expecting these things to get this big. I know they can be prolific, and I've harvested them before, but man, I had like 31 pounds and 9 ounces of eggplants, and they just flat out. That was a lot of something we weren't expecting to come through with that much stuff. It's one thing when you go through a garden expansion. It's like trying to plan for the volume coming in and the harvest. That's where we messed up on that, and we messed up on spacing big time. And then some miscellaneous stuff that don't have on my okra. And I'm looking here, and I didn't write down. So I know my okra, we probably had 30 or 40 pounds of okra on there. It was we had a lot of okra throughout the year. So that was fairly significant stuff. But again, it's one of those, unfortunately, we don't eat a whole lot of okra. I like it. My wife has pickled some of it. There's a running joke on us for okra. I said something bad about okra when we first got married, 36 years ago, and compared, okay, let me explain this story. So my wife is from New Jersey. I'm from Texas. To me, fried okra is battered, breaded, deep fried okra. So when I tell my wife I want fried okra, I assume everybody knows what fried okra is. Well, she's from New Jersey. Frying okra is putting it in a pan with some butter and frying it up. And so we had a misunderstanding that didn't get communicated well. And I said something to the effect that this isn't like my mom cooks it, or that's what she heard anyway. And she goes, I will never cook you okra again. So this is only the second time I've grown it, and this was the first time I've grown it in a more quantity than what I have in the past. So that's that's kind of the backstory. 21-year-old, I screwed up. And that's kind of one of those lasting things that we bicker about every now and then. So, but the okra came in good. Cucumbers. I put this one kind of in a thing by itself. I kind of mentioned it earlier. I harvested 234 pounds of cucumbers from a 10-foot row. Yeah, that thing would not die. It kept producing. We had cucumbers coming. It's like I go out there and say, there's not going to be any out there today. And all of a sudden I'm finding another 5 or 6 cucumbers coming off the plant. It's like, I'm like, where are these guys coming from? It was a lot. I was not expecting that. So, yeah, we had a lot of cucumbers. My wife made pickles. I think what we finally found is the best way to use them is she made this cucumber limeade kind of deal that we can use as drinks and juicing it up, and that's probably the easiest way to use up a lot of it, because there's only so many pickles you can make, and so many relishes and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the huge harvest for this year was the cucumbers. And so, and then the only other thing that I grew was some mammoth sunflower seeds, and that went pretty well. We actually harvested quite a bit of seeds. I've got a bucket of I didn't weigh them up but I've got more than enough to plant for next year. And I've still got to go ahead and try brining some and roasting them and doing that. I haven't done any of that yet, but that's a project that needs to get done as well. So, but that's been the success of the garden this last year. It's been successful. I can't complain. The things I'm irritated about are the mistakes that I made, not planning for certain stuff. And we didn't fully use all of the beds either, because I know that we had some that we were using for seed saving kind of stuff that I probably should have ripped out and stuff. I've got some seeds that I've still got to go through and process and try to get those cleaned up to be able to use. But that could have gotten cleaned up, and we could have probably even had more production than what we did with those beds. But this is a learning experience when you go from a smaller size garden to a much bigger size garden. There are definitely some learning lessons, and spacing is one, trellising everything properly is two, knowing what to do with the harvest is three. Those are all major challenges we ran into this year, and it's been a busy year this year. And it's like this Christmas break, I've sat back and done a whole lot of nothing. We have been, just on lockdown pretty much, and not, we've done the Christmas stuff and gone whatever. Being my kids are all grown, we didn't have to go do a whole lot of Christmas shopping or anything like that. But it's been just kind of sitting back and relaxing. I'm just trying to recoup and kind of get back to a flow of things of a normal pace instead of this hyper pace I've been at for seems like the last year or so, or 2 years anyway. I've been running pretty heavy. I put way too much on my plate, and so I'm trying to recuperate. But I've also got to start looking at the garden going into next year, and that's what I'm probably going to be doing over the next few days. It's kind of getting a general idea of what I want to do. I know I want to try growing some potatoes. I want to try growing some sweet potatoes. A little bit more volume than what I've done. I don't remember the last time I grew potatoes. I haven't grown them in several years. I grew one sweet potato a couple years ago on a whim, and still got like 20 pounds of potatoes, sweet potatoes from those. So I want to try to do an entire bed of sweet potatoes. I want to do another round, around the corn, and I want to do the zipper cream peas again, and then do some green beans. I want to do I've got some triple L tomatoes, are the seeds that I need to get started, and we'll do that going into next year. And then we'll kind of play around with some of the other stuff and see where we're at. Obviously, I've got a lot of garlic that's going to be going in end of January. The onions come out, and I'll probably go to one of our local stores and get the bunches of onions and do the sets out like that. And we'll get those out in January, February time frame to get those stuff done. So, but that's where we're at. That's kind of the wrap up for the year. I'm inside doing this today, and I was going to go outside, but like I said, the temperature dropped 20-30 degrees, by noon. And it's like, you know what? I don't want to do this video outside with the wind blowing and it getting cold, because I don't like cold weather. So I figured I'd bring you in here and finish this up in here. So hope you have a good year. Hope you have a good the rest of the year. Be safe. God bless. And I'll see you on the next video.